So I made a decision on the DBQ. Because doing essays, making up essays is a total pain for everybody. And I don't want to do 1,000 makeups. And so we do a Thursday be 1,000 makeups, do a Friday be 1,000 makeups. And so I'm just gonna push forward and we have to do it on Tuesday. So that means everybody, almost if there's no major conflicts, so we'll do it Tuesday. And that'll give you more time to look at it. My plan is you will have to write an outline in class. Or you write the essay. But I'll let you write. You have to write it in class. But I'll let you have the documents the night. So you can go through them. You can have a good idea what your DBQ is going to be, but I want you to go through the process of writing for timing reasons. And then you need your laptops, we will type it in here. But remember, you got to have this all done, about 50 minutes. So I'll give it on Monday.
Will you collect the outlines and then give it?
Yes.
You will collect.
Yes.
So we have to do it, finish it in class.
You will do the outline Tuesday before you write the essay.
Oh.
You will have to do it in class. I want you to go through the process of the outline and write the essay.
So we can't have it pre-done.
You can't have it pre-done, but you can have it kind of plotted out in your head. But I want you to take the process, doing them both at the same time. My expectation is you'll have the outline plotted in your head. But I want you to go through the process of doing your outline and writing the essay in one class period. But you will have the documents before. Sound good? There are 74 documents. You must use 90 of them.
Example, we have 15 minutes for the outline.
Yeah, you have 15 minutes to plot both essays.
And the LDQ and
Yeah.
then, oh, you have big mouth.
And I'm not too worried about the others, but the DBQ is the one. The long essay are just, basically short ideas. I'm not worried about those. We're gonna do a couple organization things.
Complexity point that's on the DBQs, when I took, AP or English class, I would include that in my conclusion because it was easier.
Which part?
The complexity point. For the DBQ.
And yeah,
does it have to be after the exam or?
No.
So it could be in the conclusion as well.
But they basically, the complexity now is just using formulas.
Okay.
Yeah, it's if you look back at the rubric, you use 4 examples in your conference. So that's all you need.
Just for example.
Yeah. Where did we get to this? We get the prohibition.
We got the Spanish flu.
Spanish flu. Okay, let's do the Spanish flu. So tomorrow, I'll finish up any details of the war, and then we're gonna start the 20s. We're gonna watch a video on Friday. We're gonna watch a walk through the 20th century. It's one of my favorite videos I have. And so we'll watch that. I'll post it so it will be gone. The worksheet is in the packet. All right, here we go. We got prohibition. We didn't get this.
We got definitely Spanish flu and how it affected 15 to 35.
Spanish flu. All right. And the thing was, you can imagine flown away. Again, I get started. See it. If I'm teaching, it's style. All right, okay. And here's the thing. Where we at here? So it spread throughout in 3 big waves. Spring of 1918, an even bigger, horrific wave in the fall. This is not a coronavirus. So it's a little bit different than what happened, let's say, the Russian flu in 1890, 1891, or the one we went through. It didn't mutate as fast. So it came in waves. And then the spring of 1919. And when it hit in 1918, all the warring powers censored the news. They didn't want people to know. They didn't want to know how it was affecting the war. I mean, it would dramatically hit the trenches. You can imagine all these young men piled together in the trenches. So the first really big news to hit about this flu that they tried to suppress, even though everyone's talking about it, was the cases broke out in neutral Spain. Spain, Spanish flu. That's all time. Even though it almost certainly started in Kansas. Probably at one of the hastily built training facilities outside of Topeka, and then spread by railroad to Philadelphia, the main embarkation point for troops going to Europe and all over. So the Spanish flu, and you can see many more people died of this than the war, but the war accelerated this. And you go to cemeteries, 1818, 1819, there's so many. And a couple things, I do like this, it's at the Naval Yards in Philadelphia. And they knew it was transmitted, they had a good idea, but they thought it might have been as part of like spit or it's fell for your mouth. What's the spit? So don't spit. I thought that was kind of funny. But pretty soon everybody had masks. And they had known about germ theory and masks since the 1870s. Robert Lister was the one who came up to him, really did germ theory. If you ever seen Listerine, it's named after him. But Lister had already done it, so they knew the effectiveness of masks. Masks alone give you a little bit of protection, but if everybody that's in a room wears a mask, has regular protection. They knew about that in 1918. So here we have people in masks and wear a mask. I love this one. Buy Hort's malted milk. That will help you with COVID. Reminds me of people taking horse dewormer during during COVID. This is it's a gift or jip. Which one do you want?
Jip.
So how it spread in the fall, how quickly it spread in the fall of 1918. So it starts, it picks up again in a few harbor cities. You see it right there. And within 3 weeks, nationwide. On the roads, on the railroads. And what's going to happen, which kind of happened during COVID, you can see it just all of a sudden people quit going out their homes, they quit leaving schools, or quit mail delivery stopped even for a while because they were afraid. And for example, since they knew air circulation mattered, in Helena, for example, they did school outside. So even in the winter of 1918, they did school outside in tents, big open tents, and it was kind of bundled up. Yeah, I guess we could have done that in 2021. So that is one of the many mass graves dug in Philadelphia because so many people died. And trying to work with a mask on, gee, I wonder what's that like. Do you have any experience with trying to work with a mask on? And here's a couple of things more people in masks. I do think it's fascinating how we had so many people protesting a little bit of discomfort of wearing a mask. But anti-mask league, 3 shot in struggle over mask. So if you think people were upset about the discomfort of wearing a mask in 2021, it happened in 1919. Humans are humans, it always happens. So one thing about this is you have this massive catastrophe hit when avoid. What this is going to lead to, it's going to accelerate and add this. After the war, it's going to accelerate inflation. Because all of a sudden, you have less goods being shipped, people are afraid to go to factories, not as many goods are being produced. And inflation, which is already bad because of the wars, will be worse nationwide, worldwide, because of toxic COVID, because of Spanish flu. Gee, I wonder what inflation because of COVID or an epidemic will be like. The same reason prices exploded at the end of 2021, 2022, all over the world. Massive supply shortages because of COVID. And then we have monopolies who realize they can take advantage of that. It's happening right now with AIDS. In a different way. We have a different disease that you call about 50 million chickens killed. And there are only 2 companies now, they're monopolies that control about 98% of all hen production in the United States. So what have they done? They cut back on hen production, so supply remains low. What happens to the price? It continues to. Now, it had stabilized a little bit, but that's partially because people became afraid to buy eggs when it's like $12 a dozen. It's just happening all over the world, a little bit, but places like Canada, they don't have the monopolies, so they don't have as high prices. So back to this. Back to the war then. While this is going on, the US is building up a war, as we talked about. Wilson in the January 1918 would propose the 14 points. So this is not part of the flu. The 14 points. No, you do not write this down. Write down the 14 points. Write down the 14 points. And this was his idealized version of peace. Woodrow Wilson tried a peace agreement, but right after he was reelected in 1916, which of course was turned down. And this was going to be his idealized peace. The idea that Wilson will represent a peace where there's no true victors, where we can avoid never having war again. And he laid out these 14 points and immediately would have to revise them because there were all kinds of political issues with it. But let's get to the elements that you have to know. First up, the thought was after the war, the 14 points talked about some kind of arms reduction. And there would be efforts in the 1920s to reduce arms, like a big Washington Naval Accord to limit the size of capital ships. Remember dreadnoughts. Then open diplomacy. No more secret agreements like what happened with Italy in the war, or for that matter, all the secret negotiations before the war and the July crisis. Remember Germany and Austria acting in secret. Now, how you would enforce this would be difficult, but the idea would be open negotiation, which of course kind of would kind of happen, but pretty soon they go back to secret negotiation too. Another big one was self-determination. Remember nationalism? Let all these different groups with a national identity form their own country. The idea being, if they have their own country or decide their own fate, there'll be less chance of rebellion. The big one they purposely mentioned, it's in there. You can see, for example, of Poland. There was no Poland, but a nation for the Poles. Poland was part of the German Empire, the Austrian Empire, and the Russian Empire. Warsaw was part of the Russian Empire. But then Wilson's biggest hope was something that's been talked about for years. An organization called the League of Nations, where countries would send representatives and they could negotiate problems before they blew up in a war. So there we have this open forum. And the League of Nations would be in neutral Switzerland. And the idea would be, we have all these problems, they would go here and resolve them. And if not, and if war happens, the League of Nations stop it. Now, let me ask, you should know this. It died. World War II, they would bring it back, another version of it, bring it back. What would its successor be? United Nations. The League of Nations would be the only real part of the 14 points that survived. The rest of it would be a hodgepodge of stuff that didn't really happen. It would be part of the Treaty of Versailles, the League of Nations. It would be part of it. But there's problems right away. First off, it became largely symbolic. Wilson would change it and then change it again. Nobody read this. I even told you not to write this down because we don't really need to write it down. They have 14 points. It wasn't that. 14 points just became a symbol of peace. Like after the war, we'll do Wilson's 14 points and the war will be better, or the country will be better off, and never do it again. Even though, to be clear, nobody knew what that meant. Remember I told you about Teddy Roosevelt and he had the square deal on it? And that name for a program, even though nobody really knew what it was, and kind of represented something. I'm for the square deal. I'm for the 14 points. I'm for the New Deal that's coming up. All the way through to slogans today. I don't really know what it meant, but it's something to hold on to. Wilson's 14 points. So when Germany would call for an armistice, in essence, surrender. And part of the reason would be we surrender with the 14 points. What did that mean? Next, it was really naive. Wilson's ignorance of European politics, European history was so clear. He had no idea. And to the Allies, it's just really unrealistic. Self-determination, that people decide your own fate. You think the Allies like Britain and France are going to give up their colonies, let alone American colonies? Self-determination? Are they going to allow everyone to vote? Remember, the United States didn't allow everyone to vote. And I put this map up here. It's not quite as dramatic as the one I showed you. But remember I showed you all the different national ethnic groups here? They're on top of each other. How are they going to divide up into countries? Well, I'll tell you how they're going to divide up. At the point of the bayonet. They're just going to make them. Literally divide. Yeah, exactly. Poland, Poland is actually created. 40% of the population of Poland will not be Polish. There's gonna be Ukrainians, Russians, Lithuanians, Germans, Czechs, Moravians, Croatians, get the point. Okay. And the second largest population of Jews in the world. That'll be in Poland. And so, you can imagine the British Prime Minister Lloyd George. Yeah, whatever. Sounds great. We're not doing it. And lastly, those colonies aren't going to be given up. Is this? Central Europe is not going to be divided. It's just not going to happen. And you're going to get representatives from colonies go to the Treaty of Versailles and just be turned away. No. So 14 points became this thing, but I got to be very clear. The 14 points, almost nothing from the 14 points would really be in the treaty, except for the League of Nations. And the US didn't even ratify the treaty, so they were never a member of the League of Nations. So, those kids look happy. Are you happy with them? Because what she did, she knows. She knows what's coming. And she's really happy, but she's hiding it, her glee. Hey, let's write a thesis statement. Now, let's review again. I put up one for practice. So analyze the factors that led to the start of World War I in 1914. So the main topic, theme of the sentence, the why, kind of how you're going to answer something to tie it together. And then remember A, B, and C. Those are going to be your topics for your paragraphs. Now for the DBQ, we're going to do a 4-paragraph. For this one, you're going to write a 5-paragraph. Don't write this one down yet. I'm just going to give you a thesis, a practice, just a sample. And then you will write it down. So, I don't know why I used red, but I wanted to. Pretty basic thesis, right? You remember all this stuff? And basically, we're right this, you intense nationalism, the Balkan crisis. Nationalism will be kind of tied in all 3 paragraphs, we kind of tie it all together with nationalism. So if you're just write this, if I was just going to write a 1-paragraph essay about World War I, nationalism would probably be the big thing. First body paragraph. Balkan crisis. Second, alliance system and arms race. 3rd paragraph, July crisis. If you're writing a 4-paragraph essay, you just need an A and a B. Right? So if this is an essay, you're basically writing a short idea of the Balkan crisis. Short idea, let's say for one example. In an essay, you need 2 examples that you know. Tie it back to your thesis statement. Boom, next paragraph. In a DBQ, you need 2 documents that relate back to your topic sentence. Remember, use the documents as evidence. So, let's do another one. You do this. Assess the validity of this statement. Now, the why, here's the great thing about validity of this statement. What's the why that ties it together? Agree or disagree. Agree or disagree that it was economic issue or was it the world standard for democracy? So we talked about it. I gave you what, 6 reasons when the United States entered the war. You're going to do a thesis statement for 5 paragraphs. So you need 3 A, B, and C, some kind of why, take a stand on it. And here's the last thing before you quick write your thesis. Have fun. Just quick write a thesis. Right. Quick write a thesis, just do your notes. It's on an assignment, just do it at the top of your margins, wherever you want it. Write a thesis.
Or did you just say like?
You have to address the statement, yeah. So you have to address democracy and economic issues.
So you said in the state.
You don't even say in the statement. Just say that the United States went to war because of. So we misunderstood.
Yeah.
You don't need to say in the statement, just say address the main point of the statement. The war, they say the war was not about democracy, but economic interest. You can agree, disagree, agree with part, disagree with part. You do have to address somewhere democracy and economic interest. So it was for democracy, it wasn't for democracy. And economic interest, and then a good A, B, and C. Remember, the A, B, and C, those will be your topics of your body paragraphs. When you're done, make sure you take a stand on it, so that's your why, then make sure you have an A, B, and C. No, we're not gonna write this one down, but think if you can come up with a couple facts for it to prove it. Be practical, which ones you can get the most information on. And don't forget, I gave you two of the most important ones, and then a bunch of other reasons. Not every sense. Get the main facts down. Yeah. If you have time to go back and you can reword it a little bit, maybe. Probably. Should be nearing the finish line. I get what you're thinking. Think, find a different reason. There's telegram. There's debt. There's okay, I'll give everyone another second. Make sure you have an A, B, and C that you can identify where your body paragraphs are going to be. That's really important to organize yourself, but it helps the person grading you too. If the person grading you knows where you're going to go, life is easy. Last thing for today. Okay, so is everyone about done? This is what I want you to do. Let's exchange with a neighbor. You have to do groups of 3, groups of 2, go exchange across. About to do groups of 3, but everyone exchange with a neighbor. Look at your thesis, read that other person's thesis statement, talk about if you have the X, the Y, something to tie together. The big thing about the Y, take a stand. I hope you guys get a question like this. You won't, but I hope you. And it was the other one has a progressive one. I think mine was than my. And the thing is, you get 3 choices without, I'm not, the DBQ is the one that causes me the most problems. That worry about for you guys, because you get 1 choice and that's it. The other guy says you get choices, I'm not worried. You got people. I'm pretty. Yeah, and your guys, your best choices are better too. And they'll do it again. And I have no idea if it's all gonna. All right, did everyone great? Everyone look at theirs? I'll give you another couple seconds. Is everyone happy with with this? You want to just write this one? I think this would be a pretty good essay to get. If we're gonna get an essay, you know, this would be a good one to get. Cross your fingers. I hope you get something like this on the AP exam. The problem with standardized tests, though, you get what you get, right? I know. You get what you get. So here's the thing. Huh? That's what? Oh. Haunting. All right. Anybody read a thesis statement that changed their life? You're now going to go off. I mean, you're a different person. Did you read somebody? Did you read somebody's? Now nobody wants to say, you know, I'll probably call the person who says that name, right? Would anybody like to read their thesis? Anyone are probably pretty good. Anybody want to volunteer? Do you want to go into, do you want to read yours? Go ahead.
Sure. The United States entered World War I to keep the world safe for American economic interests, as shown by the U.S. only trading with the Allies, the secret deals with Italy that the U.S. supported, the lack of project about nuclear for blocking against Turkey as a non-trade partner, especially after the Zimmerman program.
Okay, so you got the Zimmerman telegram. The blockade. Yeah, I guess you tied that to trade, so that works for all three. The only thing is you didn't mention democracy. You didn't have that, right? And that said, you just have to say it was not for democracy. You have to be clear about that. Other than that, I see an A, B, and C. I see where you're gonna go. So good thesis statement. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
United States said they between the war helped to increase trade with allied countries, makes it bought bombs from the United States themselves.
And what else?
The United States themselves like
Yeah, very good. And all three you can make, ask, and those are good points to have. You have good A, B, and C. You can stand on it. You mentioned democracy, but it's economic issues. Very good. Yeah, go ahead.
The United States entered the war, guys, making the world safer for democracy, hiding its economic interests, made by the large ones here, loss of ships, with unrestricted U-boat warfare and increased trade with the aliens.
Very good. And that's when the U-boat war directly ties to merchant ships, which ties to trade. So we have, very good. All three, very good. One more.
U.S. entered World War I not to protect democracy, but to safeguard economic interests as well as things pressured by banks. There was the U-boat offensive and to keep trade.
Very good. Anybody, is that kind of close? I think a lot of people kind of nodding along first couple. Anyone have anything radically different for A, B, and C? Would that be a good essay to get? Hey, if we're gonna get a question, this would be a great one. One thing great about the AP exam for this long essays, lots of the APQ. You get choices for essay, for long essay. And so that one, people do really well. The DBQ, you get no choice. You get what you get. And that's why we'll do this next one coming up, and we'll do another one and a couple other things, just because you have to really adjust. Hey, you might get a question you don't know. That's probably standardized test. That's why we love them so much. Yes.
you do keep it all the way from there.
No, it'll go from 1863 or 1763 to 1980.
That's
Yeah, so the Treaty of Paris is 1763, the end of the French and Indian War. So basically the Revolutionary War through the 1970s.
Oh, through
And then there'll be a few questions before that, like multiple choice, few questions after. You might get, there might be a chance for an essay question from 1980 to 1990. But most of those questions will be in the same range. So, yeah. So that's why in class, by May, we will get into pretty good detail, but everything works right by that. You add a few things you'll get on your own. Prepare. I have no idea what the questions will be. You know, like last year they did fantastic on the exam. We got, I can't remember how many classes, I think it's 7 or 8. We got a ton. More 4s than any others. So they did really good for, who knows? And then a lot of 3s, which is great too. And then the year before, not quite as good, you know, I mean.
Depends on like.
It is frustrating because all you get is a number. You have no idea. As you know,
Can you see,
everyone who took an AP exam, you know, you have no idea how you did it, you just get a number. Yeah.
can you guys see the students' numbers?
We see your number, and then we get kind of a generic thing saying, people did well on this part of the test, which doesn't really tell you a lot. So we'll get a number, I'll see it. But that's all I get. I have no idea why.
It takes a long time for the thing to come out.
All right, here we go. Let's get back to the notes then. So let's get to, oh, here's mine. Sound good? That didn't sound a lot different than what I just heard, right? Only thing I did is I added a little few more words for the A, B, and C. And if I was doing a 4-paragraph essay, I would probably do warfare and banks. I think I could do the most on that. Because kind of got to get banks and bonds or trade because if you say economic issues, but you know. All right. So the American Expeditionary Force, that's the name, the AEF, with a name given to the American forces. The first troops who arrived, there they are right there, arrived in 1917, but the US didn't have large numbers to the summer of 1918. The commander would be General John Pershing. Pershing actually led the cavalry into Mexico against Pancho Villa. And Pershing was a competent general who demanded the United States fight as an American army, not have their troops just plugged in to replace British and French losses. The Allies would be kind of bitter about that because they just needed men, but it actually made sense. You want to fight under officers of your own nation, you know, rather than, you know, having like French forces fight under American officers or vice versa. The nickname for American soldiers in World War I would be doughboys. Doughboys. We're not sure where that came from. Probably the Mexican War, but we're not sure. So doughboys. World War II, anybody know what the nickname for American troops would be? Yeah, GIs. Government issue, GI. That's World War II. And Germany, knowing large numbers of American troops are going to start arriving, remember, this is attrition, it's a war of numbers, rushes out of the war. They're going to try their last offensive. 1918, the spring offensive, it's also called the Kaiser offensive. So there's Hindenburg, the overall commander, the Kaiser, and Ludendorff. Knock out the Allies. And once again, they thought they could do it to the British. And beginning in, you know, with Verdun, they're developing new tactics. They tried to make in Italy at the end of 1917, it almost knocked Italy out of the war, a battle called Capriano. And so the German plan was to have specially trained soldiers who were trained to operate alone. Instead of the mass wave attacks, they will attack at night or just before sun in small groups, infiltrate behind enemy lines, bypass strong points, leave it for reinforcements, get into the rear of the enemy and just wreak havoc. So get behind, encircle, and penetrate. And they call these specially trained troops. Anybody know what they call them? Yeah, stormtroopers. Stormtroopers. And here's a picture of stormtroopers. And they're ready to fight at any time. Yes, there are Lego stormtroopers. I don't think actually the Danish company that makes Legos made the stormtroopers, but you can buy these. People are interesting. Stormtroopers. And they carried these big siege bags, knapsacks full of grenades. So they had firepower. They even invented a new weapon called a submachine gun. There was a handheld machine gun that fired pistol bullets, so the range was really short, but you just spray bullets out there. They jammed all the time, they're problematic. But they would use them a lot in World War II. It would be a precursor to what the Germans would have then called an assault rifle. Using the machine gun and a rifle. But here's these stormtroopers on the advance. These are specially trained soldiers. And the thought was they would attack the British who had their line in a series of single fortified points, get behind and go. And this will be successful. It worked. March 1918, for the first time in the war, the stalemate has been broken. But immediately problems came up. Immediately problems. Well, first off, you can see the problem right there. The thought was that they would break through and then they had cavalry ready to go. Here's German cavalry. But do you see the problem? The area they conquered was a wasteland. The cavalry really couldn't get going. And as they advanced, they outran their supply line. Their supply line was cut off. But even a bigger problem happened, morale. The Germans were told that U-boats were starving the British and they're ready to quit. U-boats were starving. They got to the British trenches. When they occupied the trenches, here are stormtroopers on the advance. This is actually one of the future offensives because that's a French soldier. But they expected to meet starving British soldiers. When they got to the trenches, they found more food and more supplies than the Germans had. And when they captured depots, even more food. And they were told Britain was starving. So you can imagine the men stopped and engorged themselves. But more important, they realized something, which is like a light went on in the German army. Our leaders have been doing what to us? That's what we have been. The leaders have been lying to us. And it makes sense, doesn't it? You think about the thought process. They've been lying about this, what else have they been lying? Maybe the whole world's a lie. We're not really lying. And this is gonna filter its way back to the home front. And so this would devastate German morale, but it's gonna take about 3 months. They're gonna have a series of offensives, but the problem is they broke through, but then what? They couldn't decide what to do. They broke through right here. Do you go to the sea and cut off the British? Do you go to Paris? So Ludendorff really couldn't decide. So they made another attack, they advanced, made another attack, advanced, made another attack, advanced. They broke through, but didn't win the war. And you can imagine, this is attrition. Those stormtroopers were the first troops killed. And so the Germans, they did break through, did not win the war, and their casualties were outrageously high. And the Allies finally did something that they had been hesitating to do for years. They finally picked an overall commander of all Allied forces, a very competent French general by the name of Ferdinand Foch. Foch. Here he is right here after the war. So, for example, these are the main commanders of the army. So he's French. There's commander of the French army, Pétain, the British army, Haig, General Pershing, for example. And here's the French forces stopping them near Paris. The German offensives, they broke through, did not win the war. By July, they're done. They shot their bolt. They couldn't fight anymore. And so the last German offensive had failed. It's one of the great what ifs. If they would have had a better plan and broke through and advanced to the sea, maybe they could have done something. One more thing, after the war, this is going to revolutionize tactics. From now on, and especially today, all infantry, ground combat soldiers follow the stormtroopers training. They do that training. You know, a little different, obviously we have different weapons, but one more thing. You can imagine what people are doing after the war. Attack, bypass strong points, advance as fast as you can in the rear. What if you have mechanized troops? Tanks. British started thinking about this, the brand new Soviet Union. So with the Germans. And a guy named Heinz Guderian who was in this battle. He was an officer, would write a book about this. He would dub this kind of warfare. Anybody know what? Blitzkrieg. It's coming to World War II. It'll be right here. What's Blitzkrieg mean? Lightning war. So I know a lot of you are also saying, I want to remember Marshal Foch. I want something that would always be with me. So I already showed you one tattoo. Here's another tattoo. A tattoo this woman in Paris got a tattoo of Marshal Foch. This is just a couple of years ago on her back. Who agrees that is amazing? Doesn't look like it's about ready to fall asleep, but she's moving her back. And the best part about that tattoo, as she gets older, that face is going to do all kinds of amazing things. And see where this is going?
It's like
7 points extra points.
In
seven.
Yeah, your math function.
Is
It's not too many. 5 points.
Is that half the stab?
Yeah. By the way, I can guarantee you, I guess if you're gonna get this done to you and you can never wash off, she's the kind of person who will wear clothing that can make sure you can see that for the rest of her life. So this is gonna scare children for years to come. Moving on. So the French, they did advance all the way to here. They got fairly close to Paris. The first American troops that went into the war would be they would be allowed to go inside French units. And American forces fought with great bravery, but showed a lot of holes in their training. They were still doing the mass attacks. American training was not at all adequate for the war, but there are a lot of Americans coming. And in August of 1918, the plan was just for an offensive to push them back. And this is Germans on the retreat, and you can see shell blast. than German soldiers. Here's Americans celebrating at St. Gal. This offensive was just gonna push him back. It turned into a massive offensive because the Germans kept retreating. The thought was that this war will last well into 1919. All of a sudden, by the end of September, everything's changed really fast. And they begin to push towards this green line is where the war would end. This green line. The first full US Army, the first US Army. So Pershing would get his command, would attack right here at St. Mihiel and push this salient back. So on my dad's side, my great uncle, started. He died there, some partridge there. So when we were there, 2013, I found it. And one more thing. While this is going on, the Ottoman Empire forms, just collapsed. And soon they sued for peace, and the empire would die. Bulgaria, once that happened, they surrendered. And October, the Austrian Empire forms. And so the whole thing started to collapse. One day in September, at the end of September of 1918, almost 100,000 German soldiers surrendered. We're jumping right here, surrendered. These are German POWs. There's just a sea of them, and the army began to collapse. These are American soldiers taking German prisoners right here, German prisoners. And the big area where the Americans attacked, this was, Paul said, all right, Pershing, you want to attack? We'll give you the hardest section. The Meuse Argonne Forest. You can get an idea how heavily forested this was. This is a night attack using what are called star shells to see. Look at the forest after the battle. The Americans are going to lose 80,000 men in this forest. In a month and a half. A bloodbath. 80,000 Americans, yeah. But the German army was collapsing. By October, Ludendorff, who had a complete breakdown, was saying it's over. His stepson, who he was very, very close to, died during the battle. And this was beginning in September, and for the rest of the war, Ludendorff had the body brought back. And everywhere he went, he had the body. Yeah, he had a complete breakdown. I mean, complete breakdown. Yeah, it's awful. It's just awful. So, and in November, Germany explodes in revolution. It started in the naval yard and soon spread. Food shortages, tiring of the war, rumors that armistice, the war could have been over, but no one accepted it. And then once Austria surrendered, it was like it was over. So in all of these cities here that are the shade, that's where revolution took place. This is in Berlin, and the Kaiser abdicated. The Kaiser took off running. Once his general said it's over, he went to the Netherlands and got exiled. He would remain there until 1942. He died in 1942 in the Netherlands, chopping wood. What's that ironic in 1942? What did happen by 1942? World War II, and Germany had conquered the Netherlands. And Hitler didn't know what to do with the Kaiser. Should we bring him back? I don't know. So they just left him. And he died during the war. So, the provisional government immediately asked for an armistice to cease fire. They could have ended it the night of the 10th, but then a member of Marshal Foch's staff said, wait a second. There's all kinds of problems in England right now. And shouldn't the war end at a dramatic time? The 11th day of the 11th month. Of the 11th month. The 11th hour, 11th day of 11th month. Start. 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th. So they fought for another 10 hours. They fought for another 10 hours. Some American commanders, like General Bullock, the commander of the U.S. First Army, was very upset. The war was over. And so he ordered the last offensive of the war at 10 a.m., even though everybody knew the war was over. There'd be another 1,000 American casualties. They knew the war was over. In fact, German machine gunners were yelling at the Americans, the war is over, stop. Yet the Americans still did. Now there's a myth that Germany did this. Germany did not do this. They just hunkered down in their trenches. The Americans did this one. 1,000 more. And the war was over. And then everybody, in the last 5 minutes before 11, everybody fired everything they had up in the air. True, they just fired everything. And then silence. Both sides got out of the trenches and looked at each other. The deal that the German commanders made with their army, that their army was broken. They said, you guys march home. Stay your units, march home. As soon as you get home, you're released. You're done. So the German army marched home in good order, but they were defeated. A peace agreement would be signed. Last thing for today, it'd be in a railway car in Compiègne, outside of Paris. Here, those signing the treaty, the provisional government would sign it. This is going to become a big monument, you can imagine, for France, you know, the war ending. And a real symbol for Germany, at this forest in Compiègne, the train car. So let me show you another picture. See the train car? See that cement field in front? Here's that same rail car, slightly different. Who's in front of the rail car? Did you see Adolf Hitler? France would have to surrender in World War II in the same rail car. Germany brought it back to Berlin. The thought was to make it kind of a prize of war. Allied bombing in March of 1945 destroyed that rail. The Allies destroyed Berlin. And on that happy note, oh, wait. Okay, I'll let you go. So, tomorrow I'll fill in a few of the details of Treaty of Versailles and start the 20s. And we start the 20s with hell. The Red Sun. One of the worst things ever happens at this time. Thank you, my good man, for getting that done. I can move that?
We did it together. Oh, your freshman year and sophomore year. This year, are you doing this now? Because it's great. Next year, you know what? Bring it back. So one day.